Judge tries to silence Pam Bondi by objecting to her Bible in the courtroom, but she shuts him down with constitutional law. It was a calm morning in the bustling courthouse of Miami, Florida. The air was thick with anticipation, as cases of all types were scheduled for hearings. Among the attorneys making their way into the courtroom was Pam Bondi, known for her sharp wit and unwavering stance in the courtroom. Today, however, she wasn't just carrying her usual briefcase. Instead, in her hand, she clutched a small, worn Bible, a reminder of her faith, something she always kept close, and today, it was going to be part of her argument. As she entered the courtroom, she could feel the eyes of the room on her. The court was nearly full with spectators, but it was the judge who held her attention. Judge Jonathan Hale, a seasoned jurist known for his no-nonsense approach, sat at the bench, his eyes narrowing slightly as Pam walked to her designated spot. There was something different about today. Something in the air seemed charged, and Pam could feel it in her bones. Judge Hale didn't speak immediately, but instead watched as Pam carefully placed her Bible on the table in front of her. His gaze lingered on the book for a moment longer than necessary, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the armrest of his chair. The tension was palpable. Then, in a tone that commanded attention, Judge Hale spoke. "Ms. Bondi," he began, his voice sharp, "I must remind you that this is a courtroom, not a place for religious symbols or personal displays of faith. You will need to remove that book or face a fine for disrupting the decorum of this court." Pam didn't flinch. She kept her eyes steady on the judge, her grip tightening slightly around the Bible. "Your Honor," she replied, her voice firm but respectful, "this book is not a mere symbol. It's a reminder of the values I hold dear and the foundation of my argument today. My faith is not something I can set aside simply for your convenience." The room was still. Even the court reporter, who is usually focused on her job, had stopped typing for a moment, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The judge leaned forward, his expression hardening. "I am well aware of your beliefs, Ms. Bondi," Judge Hale said coldly. "But in my courtroom, there is no room for such displays. The law is blind to religion, and I will not allow any personal beliefs to influence the proceedings." Pam's gaze didn't waver. She wasn't about to back down. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with silence. Pam knew this wasn't just a matter of personal preference or etiquette. This was a matter of principle. She had walked into that courtroom with the Bible, fully prepared to defend not only her client but her rights that were guaranteed by the Constitution. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady, "I understand the importance of maintaining neutrality in the courtroom. But this book is not here to disrupt the proceedings. It's a part of who I am, and I have every right to bring it with me. The First Amendment protects my right to free expression, including my right to practice my faith." Judge Hale's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak immediately. He had been on the bench for decades, and yet Pam's calm defiance seemed to unsettle him. He adjusted his glasses, clearly trying to gather his thoughts. "Ms. Bondi," he said after a long pause, "this courtroom operates under strict rules of decorum. If you continue to insist on this," he gestured toward the Bible, "I will have no choice but to impose a fine for disrupting the court's neutrality." Pam didn't blink. She was prepared for this moment, and she wasn't about to let her principles be bent to fit someone else's idea of what was appropriate. "Your Honor," she said, "with all due respect, the First Amendment guarantees the right to freedom of religion. That includes the right to express my faith, even in a courtroom. The law doesn't require me to silence my beliefs just because I'm an attorney here today. If you're asking me to choose between my faith and my profession, I'm afraid you've misjudged me." The judge's eyes narrowed. He could see that Pam was determined, but he wasn't ready to concede. This was a matter of his authority, and he wasn't one to back down easily. "I will not tolerate this," Judge Hale snapped, his voice rising slightly. "I will not let your personal beliefs overshadow the judicial process." Pam folded her arms across her chest, calm but resolute. "Then I'll take the fine," she said, her voice unwavering. "But I'll also be filing an official objection on record. Because what you're doing is not just a violation of courtroom decorum, It's a violation of my constitutional rights. The proceedings continued, but the tension had shifted. The courtroom was no longer focused on the business at hand. It was focused on Pam's quiet defiance and the judge's attempt to stifle it. The courtroom, once a place of legal disputes, had turned into a stage for a much larger battle, one that would soon be broadcast beyond these walls. As the session dragged on, Pam knew the true battle was not in this courtroom. It was what would come next, the fallout. She had made her stand, and now it was time to ensure it wouldn't be forgotten. As the hearing concluded, Pam walked out of the courtroom, Bible still in hand. The reporters were already gathering outside, their cameras flashing. Within moments, a news story had broken about the religious conflict in the courtroom. And as the hours passed, the story went viral. The next day, Pam's office phone rang off the hook, with journalists, legal analysts, and colleagues calling to discuss the situation. But it wasn't the media attention that mattered to Pam. It was the principle she had stood for, and the realization that her fight had sparked a much larger conversation. The Florida Bar Association was quick to issue a statement, expressing concern over the potential for judicial overreach. A review was announced regarding Judge Hale's actions, and Pam knew this battle wasn't over. But even if Judge Hale escaped unscathed, one thing was clear. Pam had made her point. She had stood up for her rights, for the rights of every person who had ever been made to feel their beliefs didn't belong in a public space. "I'll fight this, and I won't back down," Pam told her assistant as she reviewed the media coverage. "If Judge Hale thinks this will go quietly, he's mistaken. This is about more than just a book. It's about defending the freedom to be who you are wherever you are."